A woman at the airport demanded I give up my first-class seat because single people don't deserve luxury. When I refused, she threw her drink at me and shrieked, "You're a selfish, entitled brat." As security escorted her off the plane, I smirked and said, "Looks like I'll be enjoying my flight, and you won't." Alright, so this just happened, and I'm still in disbelief. I travel a lot for work, and I finally had enough miles to upgrade to first class on my flight from JFK to London. It wasn't even something I paid extra for, it was just a well-earned perk after months of flying economy. I was exhausted, looking forward to stretching out and enjoying a quiet, comfortable flight. Turns out, peace was not on the itinerary. I got to the gate early, grabbed a coffee, and sat near the boarding area, scrolling on my phone. That's when I first noticed her. Middle-aged, expensive-looking coat, designer luggage, and massive sunglasses indoors. She was standing with her family, a man who I assumed was her husband, and 2 kids who looked around 10 and 12. At first, I didn't think much of it, but I kept feeling eyes on me. Every time I glanced up, she was staring. Not in a casual, "Oh, I recognize you" way. No, this was deliberate. Like she was sizing me up. It was weird, but whatever. Airports are full of weird people. I ignored it. A few minutes later, the first-class boarding announcement came. I stood up, grabbed my bag, and made my way toward the line. That's when she pounced. "Excuse me," she said, stepping right in front of me like I owed her something. "Are you in first class?" I was caught off guard. Yeah?" She nodded, like she had just confirmed something. "You should switch seats with me." I blinked. "What?" She sighed, as if I were the dumbest person alive. "We only got 2 first-class seats, and we gave them to our kids. My husband and I are in business class, and we need to sit together. You don't." I thought she was joking at first. Yeah, I do." "That's my seat." She frowned. "But you're alone." Now I was confused. "And?" She huffed. "Single people don't need first class. We have kids. We deserve that seat more than you do. Now I want to make something very clear. I have nothing against parents. But I do have a problem with entitled people who think their choices mean the rest of the world should accommodate them." I stared at her. No. Her mouth literally fell open. Like no one had ever told her. No. Before. "Excuse me?" she snapped. "You're seriously refusing?" "Yes," I said. "I paid for my ticket just like you did. Your poor planning is not my problem." Her face turned red. "You're being incredibly selfish," she hissed. "We're parents. We've been so stressed, and we just wanted a chance to relax on this flight." I could feel people watching now. Even the gate agent was glancing over. Her husband, who had been standing awkwardly behind her, finally spoke up. "Just let it go, honey. It's not a big deal." But she ignored him. "Listen," she said, lowering her voice like she was being reasonable. "You're young. You don't need luxury like we do. You have no responsibilities. You'll have plenty of chances to fly first class in the future. Let someone who deserves it have the seat." I almost laughed. "I earned this seat. You had the same chance to book one. You chose to give your kids the seats instead. That was your decision. Not mine." At this point, she looked like she was vibrating with anger. "You're seriously going to be that person?" she snapped. "Yep," I said, taking a sip of my coffee. She crossed her arms. "Wow. You must be so proud of yourself, taking a seat from a struggling mother." I raised an eyebrow. "Lady, you're in business class. It's not like I'm making you sit in the cargo hold." That's when she lost it. Without warning, she threw her drink at me. It happened so fast I barely dodged, but some of it splashed onto my sweater. For a second, no one moved. The entire gate area was dead silent. Then, the gate agent picked up the airport phone and said, "Security, we have an issue at gate 14. The woman's face went white. She immediately tried to backtrack. "It was an accident," she gasped. "He startled me." A security officer arrived within seconds. "Ma'am, is there a problem?" She turned on the fake tears instantly. "He was harassing me. He was being aggressive." The gate agent, bless her, stepped right in. "No, he wasn't," she said. "This woman just threw her drink at him because he wouldn't give up his seat." The officer turned to me. "Sir, do you want to press charges?" I wanted to. Oh, I really wanted to. But I had a better idea. "I don't want to press charges," I said. "But I do think she shouldn't be allowed on this flight." And that's when things got really interesting. The second I said those words, "I don't think she should be allowed on this flight," The woman's whole demeanor shifted. Her face went from fake crying to pure rage. "You can't do that!" she shrieked, her voice cutting through the terminal like a fire alarm. "I have a family! My children are on this flight! What kind of monster separates a mother from her kids?" At this point, the security officer was done playing around. "Ma'am, lower your voice," he said firmly. "We need to discuss this calmly." But she was far from calm. She turned to her husband like he was supposed to fix this. "Do something!" she snapped at him. "He's trying to ruin our trip!" The husband looked miserable. "I told you to let it go," he muttered. "Let it go!" she screeched. "Our children are sitting alone in first class." And that's when I realized something. Her kids had no idea what was happening. They had been sitting on the floor a few feet away, headphones in, completely unbothered. They weren't crying for their mom. They weren't panicking. They were chilling. And the realization hit me: this woman wasn't throwing a tantrum because she was worried about her kids. She was throwing a tantrum because she wasn't getting her way. The security officer turned to the gate agent. "Is she causing a disruption?" The agent didn't even hesitate. "Yes. She threw a drink at another passenger and is now yelling in the boarding area." The woman's head snapped toward the agent. "You're lying!" The officer sighed, rubbing his temples. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to step away from the gate." She lost it. She stomped her foot like a child. "No! I am getting on this flight." The officer exchanged looks with the gate agent. "If you don't step away, we'll have to remove you from the airport." Now, you'd think this would be the moment she'd realize she screwed up. That she'd take a deep breath, apologize, and at least try to salvage the situation. But no. She lunged for me. Not to hit me, but to grab my boarding pass. She actually grabbed at my boarding pass like she was going to snatch it out of my hand. And I reacted instinctively. I pulled back, stepping away, but she was still reaching, fingers clawing at the air. The security officer grabbed her before she could make contact. "That's it," he said sharply. "You're done." Her husband looked horrified. "Jesus, Amanda, stop!" "Yeah. Her name's Amanda." Classic. She fought the officer. Not like full-on punching, but wriggling, trying to pull away, still shrieking about how I didn't deserve first class, and how she was being oppressed because she was a mother. The gate agent turned to the security officer and said words that made my soul happy. "She is not getting on this plane." I don't think I've ever seen someone switch emotions so fast. 1 second, she was all fire and fury. The next, her face crumpled. "No," she whispered. "You can't do this to me." Her husband let out a deep sigh. "We'll talk about this later." She whipped toward him. "You're letting them do this?" Her husband just shook his head. He looked so done. Like this was not the first time she had pulled some crazy stunt. The officer pulled out his radio. "We need backup for an uncooperative passenger." Her whole body tensed. And then, she did something that made everything worse. She screamed, at the top of her lungs. "He assaulted me!" And just like that, everything went silent. The officer holding her froze. The gate agent looked horrified. I felt my stomach drop. Because if there's one thing that can turn a situation dangerous real fast, it's a false accusation. The other passengers who had been watching? They all gasped. Some took a step back. Others immediately pulled out their phones. I was in shock. "What?" She pointed a shaking finger at me. "He attacked me. I'm a woman. He grabbed me first." I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. This was bad. And then, something unexpected happened. One of the bystanders, a woman in her 60s with short gray hair, spoke up. "I was watching the whole thing," she said loudly. "She's lying." A ripple of agreement went through the crowd. A man with a business suit crossed his arms. "Yeah, I saw everything too. The only person being aggressive here is her." The gate agent spoke up, her voice sharp. "We have security cameras at the gate. I suggest we check the footage." The officer's grip on the woman tightened. "Ma'am, you're under investigation for making a false report. You need to come with us." Now she actually started panicking. "And no, he..." She looked around, but no one was on her side. Her husband? He had stepped away from her. Her kids? Still blissfully unaware. And me? I was watching the whole thing unfold with the single most satisfying thought in my head: this was not over yet. The second the security officer told her she was under investigation for a false report, I saw the shift. Her eyes darted around, looking for anything that could get her out of this. She wasn't panicking because she was scared. She was panicking because she was losing. I need to speak to a manager, she screeched. Lady, this isn't a Starbucks. The gate agent sighed, rubbing her temples. Ma'am, we don't have managers here. Security is handling this. And then, like some villain in a badly written movie, she smirked. Oh, really? She purred. Because I happen to be very good friends with the director of airline operations. The security officer looked unimpressed. That's nice. You still need to come with us. But she wasn't finished. She turned to her husband, who was looking more and more like he regretted every life decision that led to this moment. Call Greg, she ordered. Her husband looked confused. Who? Greg. The guy we met at the gala last month. The one with the airline connections. Her husband just stared at her. Amanda, I have no idea who you're talking about. Are you kidding me? You're so useless. Oof. Now that got the crowd murmuring. I saw an older woman give her husband a look, like get out now while you still can. The husband took a deep breath, then turned to the officer. I need to make something clear, he said, his voice calm. I do not support her behavior. I don't know who Greg is. And if she gets arrested, that's on her. Amanda froze. You wouldn't dare, she whispered. I would, he said. And I am not missing this flight because of your insanity. At this point, I thought the drama was over. I thought she'd finally realize she lost. I was wrong. Because this woman? She had one last trick. She suddenly dropped to the ground. Like, full-on collapsed. The crowd gasped. Someone actually screamed. She's having a heart attack! A woman shrieked. The security officer crouched beside her, instantly switching to concern mode. Ma'am, are you okay? Do you need medical assistance? Amanda let out a weak, pathetic moan. My heart, she whimpered. I almost believed her. Almost. And then I noticed something. She peeked. She literally lifted her head slightly to check if people were paying attention. I made eye contact with the gate agent. She had seen it too. The officer sighed. All right, call the paramedics. And that was when Amanda suddenly found the strength to sit up. And no, I just need water. The officer narrowed his eyes. I thought you were having a heart attack? She let out a weak laugh. It was, stress. And that was the final straw. The officer stood up, dusted off his pants, and pulled out his radio again. Confirmed, passenger is being removed for causing a disruption and making false accusations. She is not in medical distress. Airport security will escort her out. Amanda lost it. She turned on her husband, her face red with rage. Do something! And for the first time in what I assume is their entire marriage, the husband fought back. You know what? He said. I am doing something. I'm getting on this flight without you. Amanda froze. You wouldn't, she whispered. He shrugged. Watch me. Then he turned to the officer. I'd like to request that my wife's luggage be removed from the flight. She won't be needing it. And the gate agent? She smirked. Absolutely, sir. We'll take care of it. Amanda made a strangled noise. But my kids! They need me. Her husband sighed. They're old enough to survive a 7-hour flight without you, Amanda. And frankly, I think they need the break. Even I felt that one. What happens next? At this point, Amanda was dragged away by security, screaming about how she was going to sue everyone, get people fired, and that this was discrimination. Her kids? Still chilling. Her husband? Looking 10 years younger now that he didn't have to deal with her. And me? I was getting on this flight. In first class. But something told me this wasn't the last I'd hear of Amanda. Amanda was dragged out of the boarding area, still shrieking about how she was going to sue the airline, have everyone fired, and personally ruin my life. Nobody was listening. Her husband stood there, watching her disappear down the terminal with the same expression someone might have while watching a washing machine break mid-cycle. A weird mix of resignation, exhaustion, and mild curiosity, like, wow, this is a disaster, but let's see how bad it gets. The gate agent turned to him. Sir, do you still want to board the flight with your children? He let out the deepest sigh I have ever heard. Yes. Yes, I do. But then something unexpected happened. One of the kids, his daughter, I think, took off her headphones and looked around confused. Where's Mom? She asked. Her father hesitated. She's not coming. The girl blinked. Why? And then, in front of everyone, her brother snorted. Because she threw a drink at some random guy and got herself kicked out. I choked on my coffee. I don't know if it was the casual delivery, the brutal honesty, Or just the fact that this kid had probably seen some things before, but the way he said it sent a ripple of awkward laughter through the crowd. The father pinched the bridge of his nose. Not the way I would have phrased it, but yeah. That's the short version. The girl frowned. Wait. So she's not flying with us? No, her father said. She's going home. And then, the final blow. The daughter shrugged. Okay. Cool. No tears. No panic. No begging for their mother. Just indifference. And that seemed to hit the husband harder than anything else. I expected him to be embarrassed, to be in a hurry to get his kids on the plane and escape the situation. But instead, he just stood there, staring at his children like he had never really seen them before. You're not upset? He asked. His daughter wrinkled her nose. Why would I be? She's always doing stuff like this. Yeah, his son added, rolling his eyes. Remember when she got us banned from that hotel in Florida because she demanded they build a new pool since the other one was too crowded? I swear to God, half the people in the boarding area turned to look at them. The dad's face fell. I think that's when it really hit him. This wasn't some random outburst from Amanda. This wasn't a one-time embarrassment. This was a pattern. And his kids? They had just accepted it as normal. For a second, I thought he was going to cry. But instead, he just nodded slowly. Right. He said, almost to himself. That's not normal, is it? His daughter snorted. No, Dad. It's not. A long, heavy silence. Then, finally, he squared his shoulders. All right, he said. Let's go to London. And just like that, they turned and walked toward the jet bridge, leaving Amanda behind, literally and figuratively. I boarded a few minutes later, still processing everything. I settled into my seat, still in shock from the whole thing. Then, right before takeoff, I heard a voice from across the aisle. Hey. I turned. It was the husband. I hadn't even noticed he was sitting near me. He exhaled and rubbed the back of his neck. Look, man. I just wanted to say. I'm sorry about all that. I waved it off. Not your fault. He let out a humorless laugh. I mean, technically, yeah. It kind of is my fault. I married her. He shook his head. I should have seen it sooner. I guess I got used to making excuses for her. But when I saw how unbothered my kids were, that's when I realized. They expected her to act like that. They weren't even surprised. I didn't know what to say to that. After a pause, I asked, So, what now? He exhaled. I don't know. But I do know one thing, I'm done pretending this is normal. Then, he gave me a half smile. And, thanks for not giving up your seat. Seriously. If you had, she would have thought she could pull that stunt forever. I nodded. Glad to be of service. And with that, we both sat back and let the plane take off, leaving Amanda, and all of her entitled insanity, far behind. The flight was peaceful. I ate my meal in actual comfort. No screaming. No whining. Just peace and quiet. When we landed, I saw the dad and his kids one last time in baggage claim. He looked lighter, like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. And Amanda? Well, I checked later, out of curiosity. Turns out, she did try to get back on another flight. And got banned from the airline for causing another scene at customer service. Last I heard, she had to fly economy on a completely different airline. And honestly, that might have been the real punishment. As for me, I got on my next flight, sipping champagne in first class, and smiling to myself. Because sometimes, the universe does get it right.